We are happy to have you all here today. My name is Leela Oakley, and I am a part of the team here at Just Faith Ministries, and I'm excited to spend the next hour or so with each of you, letting you know about our program, Faith and Immigration Justice, and answering any questions that you might have. We are going to begin by giving you all the opportunity to go down to the chat and say hi. If you wouldn't mind, if you're in a place where you can get to the chat, going to the chat and entering your name and where you're calling in from. It's always nice to see the range of folks who join us for these calls. So feel free to go on down there and say hi. Again, for those of you who just joined, my name is Leela Oakley. I'm on the team here at Just Faith Ministries, and I am in Richmond, Virginia. And I'm joined by my colleague today, who you'll hear from in just a moment, Reverend Kristen Dollar, who's in Louisville, Kentucky. So, as I said, today we are going to be exploring the Faith and Immigration Justice Program. But before we do that, I'll turn it to Kristen. She's going to speak just for a moment about who we are as an organization, and then we'll enter into a time of prayer and jump into the program content.
How many of you all are brand new to us as Just Faith Ministries? If you're new, if you wouldn't mind also putting in the chat just the word new so we could see how many folks are new to us. And extra welcome to you if you've never done a program before. All right. Oh, great. Christine and Barbara. Awesome. So glad to see some new folks on here. So if you're new to us or you're joining us after it's been a little while, here's just a little bit about what we do before we jump in specifically to our immigration program. We as Just Faith Ministries create small group programs that ordinary people can facilitate in their communities, either they're in-person churches or communities or virtual churches and communities as well. Our programs guide groups in creating a brave space of community and trust where participants can dig deeper into their faith and ask challenging questions about the important social issues of our times. And participants really exit our programs prepared to address root causes of injustice, both in their own local communities and beyond as well, and to really lead their churches and communities in doing that. We offer programs on a wide variety of topics. Some of our topics include racial justice, creation care, civil dialogue, indigenous justice, poverty, gun violence. We also have seasonal programs for Advent and Lent. But today we will be focusing on our immigration programs called Faith and Immigration Justice. And before we join together in an opening prayer, I just like you to invite you to call to mind the reason that you are here today. Maybe it's because of a story about immigration that you heard on the news lately and you're concerned about it. Maybe it's because there's someone you love who is an immigrant. Maybe it's because you are an immigrant yourself. And so let's just take a moment to honor the people and the stories that bring us here together today. And now we pause to hold in our hearts those who are directly affected by our current immigration crisis that we are experiencing. We remember those who are trapped in unsafe conditions, who must flee their homes to find food, clean water, safety, and shelter. We remember those who are crossing deserts and oceans, risking their lives for a better future for themselves and for their families. We remember those in immigration detention centers or who are undergoing deportation proceedings, often in a language they don't understand, often without legal counsel. We remember those who are living in fear in our own communities, who are drawing the blinds, who are scared to go even to church or the grocery store. And so together, Although you are on mute, let us join together in reading the words that are bolded on the screen. Creator God, your loving care is a home for all. No one is a stranger to you. With your generous blessings, watch over migrants and all who leave their homes to escape oppression, poverty, persecution, trauma, and violence. Help us also to be sources of blessings through our acceptance and valuing who they are as persons eager for wholeness of life. Together we join together in saying, Creator, you taught us to welcome all. Help us to remember that the land we call ours is a gift to be cared for and a gift to be shared with all who come. May we be open to all those searching for a safe and peaceful life. And we join together in saying, help us to pour out your love and compassion to all of our brothers and sisters. Creator, help us to respect and revere the unknown between and among us. May we grow into new discoveries and accept new ways of learning about our common needs and desires. May we respect and may respect and reverence break down our fear, anxiety, suspicion, racism, hate, and closed-heartedness toward others. Creator, we build barriers in our hearts and make judgments that keep us from seeing others for who they are, the potential they have, and the talents they have been given. You taught us to give witness to your love for all people. May we be accepting of those who want to be our neighbors. May we rejoice in their talents and accept new life perspectives from them. And together we say, help us to pour out your love and compassion to all our brothers and sisters. Creator God, you who are present in all of humankind, guide us to be mindful of your presence and help us to act in ways pleasing to you toward all those who search for a better life. May we reach out to migrants in need of help and acceptance and stand by them as brothers and sisters in Christ. We ask this through Jesus the Christ, who was a migrant. Amen. Well, welcome again, everyone, and thank you for joining me in this prayer. It just felt really important, especially today, to pause to pray for all of those who are affected by this crisis. And that was actually a prayer from our program, one that you will, that you will experience in our program. And so we'll now turn to a little bit about the program itself, and just kind of a brief overview of where what this program is all about and where it's headed. This program seeks, first and foremost, to guide small groups in a holy and healthy dialogue around immigration. And we use the words holy and healthy for a reason here. And I'll just share a quick personal story. In 2016 and 2017, during another divisive time in our history, I was pastoring a small rural church that was surrounded by immigrants. And we knew, in part guided by our church matriarch, Miss Lavinia, that we needed to reach out to our immigrant neighbors. And we had different perspectives on this topic. We were a purple church, so to speak, and we wanted to have a conversation about immigration, but really didn't know how to do this without further dividing the congregation. And so thankfully, we were able to have some hard conversations and really wrestle with this. But I, as a pastor, really felt that I was not equipped with the resources that I needed to lead this conversation with grace and love, for our congregation and for our neighbors. And so we really created this program with, this story and stories from our, colleagues who are in similar situations, both lay folks and clergy. We created this program with these folks in mind. And we hope that this program will be a tool that you can use to facilitate this conversation in a way that really builds trust and understanding, even in churches that are divided on this topic. I also want to emphasize that you do not need to have any background on this topic to facilitate these important conversations. I know it can feel overwhelming with the amount of policy that is, seems to be changing every day, and the immigration law can feel really complicated. You do not need to have a background or expertise on this topic. You do not need to have experience facilitating groups. You do not need to be clergy. We provide everything that you need from facilitator training. We provide scripts on exactly what to say and when to say it. So this is really meant to be, we have designed this to be an easy lift for you to be able to get this conversation started in your church or community. And so now we'll move into some of the program goals. So our first goal is to discern how our faith calls us to respond to the immigration debate happening in our nation, and to explore the reasons why people choose to come to the United States. And so you'll see here, there's really two things that are emphasized. There's faith, and then there's also stories. And we've found that beginning with the foundation of our common faith, our common theology, the Christian principles that we hold in common can really create a space for community and trust to be built, even in congregations where there is disagreement. And so the faith component is really important. That's where the program starts, and that's continued throughout the program. And the second is stories. You'll have an opportunity to hear stories from folks who are immigrants and who have worked in our with our immigration process and on immigration policies. So the stories are also a key component of this program. The second goal is to learn about basic immigration policy. Participants will learn to answer the question, why don't undocumented immigrants just get in line for citizenship? There's a lot of myths like these floating around, and this program seeks to answer some of these questions in a way that's, more than just the arguing and debates that we tend to see in our churches and on social media, but really in, creative and constructive ways. And in a minute, we'll do a brief simulation that will kind of show you how, it'll give you a glimpse of how we approach these tough questions in the program itself. The third goal is to equip participants and groups to advocate for just, compassionate, and effective immigration policies, and to welcome their immigrant neighbors in their own local communities. This program is not meant to just be a learning process. It is really meant to inspire folks and give them the tools they need to begin taking action in their own communities, and to lead the wider church, their wider congregation, in taking action alongside them. And so there's multiple ways in which participants receive these tools throughout the program. Two of them are that at the end of every session, there's a now what section in which participants discern what they have learned, and how some ways in which they can take action based on what they learned in that particular session. And so every session has this now what section that you'll engage in action discernment together and create a list. And then during session 8, you'll review the list of potential action items and choose individual action step that you will take in your personal life, and also a group level action step that you will take, and to take action together in your community. And then the second way is that session 7 is actually just directly on advocacy, and it seeks to give folks some just basic tools for how we engage in advocacy. And if this is something that you're interested in, just also to mention that we have a program called Just Action: How to Advocate and Mobilize for Justice. And so that's another program that we have if you're really particularly interested in advocacy, and it can be a great companion program to this one. And then last but not least, and this is really, I think, one of the things that makes our programs unique and particularly powerful, is that our programs transform a collection of 8 to 14 individuals into a real community of love and support. The members of your community will seek to encourage we'll continue to encourage one another as you seek spiritual transformation and take action for justice after the program is finished. We have found that participants who have gone through a program together often stay together and continue to be community for each other for years and sometimes even decades after their program experience is complete. And so this is something that you can look forward to. And again, if you're really worried about division in your church, I think you can anticipate that this program will actually, instead of dividing you more, will actually help to bring you together as a more tightly knit community. Just a note about the particular focus of this program. This program primarily focuses on immigrants who are crossing our southern border, although the program also, it certainly touches upon global migration and immigrants coming to the United States from non-Latin American countries as well. But the primary focus is on immigrants who are crossing our southern border from Latin America. And ultimately, the reason why we did this is because we feel that a deeper understanding of this particular slice of the issue will help your group to better understand migration in general, as well as motivate you to learn about and learn from immigrants from all countries and cultures. And really, the scale of this issue is so huge that we felt we needed to take a slice of it in order to better understand the whole. It can be so overwhelming to talk about just global migration that taking a slice of it and doing that well felt like a more effective route to go. And then secondly, this is a piece of immigration policy that is just really on people's hearts and minds, especially right now. So now I'll move into the session outline and share with you a little bit about what's in each session. Session 1 is a time for introductions both to each other and to the theology of migration that is at the foundation of our really Christian theology across denominations, whether you're Catholic or Protestant, Episcopal, Baptist, or Lutheran. This session will introduce you to the common Christian principles around migration that we all hold. So you'll start out this session by committing to guidelines for holding space for holy dialogue around this really important issue. And these guidelines will really give you some tools for how to engage in conversation, even when you disagree, and to do that in a way that involves deep listening and mutual respect. And then after that, you'll learn about general themes within the biblical canon regarding migration, and then you'll zoom in on one specific passage that's important and illuminating. And then in addition, you'll have an opportunity to read and discuss denominational statements on migration, so you can look at this issue from and see what your specific denomination says about it. The second session, I think, is probably my favorite, or actually, I would say it's tied between the second and third. The second session, and we'll do a little simulation with this, so you can see a little glimpse of it here in a few minutes, but it's about the history of immigration to the United States. And this is an interactive activity that will guide your group in exploring the fears and the hopes underlying our immigration policy throughout the United States. And it's really important to look at our history in order to understand how these policies, our current immigration policy, came about, and so that we can avoid the mistakes of our past and create policies that are rooted in love and justice rather than fear and greed. Session 3 really is a simulation. It seeks to answer the question, why don't people just get in line and come to the United States the quote unquote legal way? This is, again, it's a simulation that will kind of give you the basics on our immigration policy. You'll receive a card that has a real life story of an immigrant or a prospective immigrant who is seeking to come to the United States, and you'll look at the different legal options, the different avenues that person might have in order to come here. And so you'll work through that through the simulation and discuss it together as a group. And then you'll learn a little bit more about who's eligible for citizenship, how do they apply, and how long does the process take. One thing that I really love about this is it's meant to be sort of a train the trainer exercise. You can go through this simulation together as a group and then take it to your wider church or community. It can be really illuminating and a great way to get the conversation started and dispel some myths around this topic. Session 4 and 5 both look at the question, why do people migrate in the first place? And so you will, in session 4, you'll view a documentary on some of the big picture factors that spur migration. And you'll specifically look at some of the international economic policies and military interventions that have really spurred immigration. A lot of people don't know about this, and it is directly relevant to what we are seeing today. And then in session 5, you will integrate some of the stories and data that you have learned from the past 4 sections in order to name the push and pull factors, the factors that push people out of their homes, for example, maybe climate change or political situations, and then the factors that might pull them to the United States, like for example, maybe safety or economic opportunities or food and clean water. And then in session 5, you'll have an opportunity to hear from a guest speaker, and Leela will share a little bit more about that in a few minutes. Session 6 looks at the current issues in migration. And so this will be an opportunity, your group will really be guided in sort of a research project. And there's very specific instructions for researching a particular topic that is relevant to your group, that your group is really wanting to learn more about. So for example, if you're going through this program right now, you might choose to focus on learning more about the deportation situation with the Venezuelan migrants, or you might choose to learn more about the TPS status and what's happening with folks who had received that status, or you might choose to look at family separations at the border, and yeah, what it looks like right now. So this is really a chance to zoom in on your group's particular areas of interest and the maybe some of the topics that are affecting your community directly. Between sessions 6 and 7 is the immersion experience, and this will be an opportunity to connect with an organization that is integrated in an immigrant community or is engaged in immigration justice efforts. This can be a really great opportunity to provide sort of a gentle on-ramp into taking action by connecting with folks who are already, who are in your community engaged in this work. Session 7, as I mentioned before, introduces some advocacy opportunities and gives you some basic advocacy tools. And session 8 is really about looking at your now what list that you've assembled throughout the program and creating an individual and group level action plan so that your small group can work together as a group and perhaps even guide your entire congregation in welcoming immigrant neighbors. The books included in this program include The Line Becomes a River by Francisco Cantu. This is a memoir about a third-generation Mexican immigrant who is also a Border Patrol agent. And so he describes his reality on the border and the people that he meets there. So it's an engaging book and very well written. The second book is more informational. It's called Welcoming the Stranger, and it's a thoughtful policy analysis that debunks some of the myths and misconceptions around immigration. It shows the limitations of our current immigration system and makes suggestions about how Christians can think about this topic in light of their faith.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm now going to share a little bit more about some of the nuts and bolts of the program. This program, like many of our other programs, is 8 sessions in length with an additional session called the immersion session, which we'll talk about here in a moment. So your group will gather a total of 9 times together. Most groups meet weekly for those 2-hour sessions, but some groups choose to meet every other week in order to accommodate the schedules of the participants in their group. You'll gather together for those sessions, and then you'll gather again, like I said, for the immersion experience. The immersion experience is a time to gather as a small group to engage in prayer and scripture, and then to meet with um, a group in your community that is taking action on this issue. So it might be that you invite them into your space to share with your group, or that you go out into the community and connect. This isn't necessarily a kind of service project that some people imagine. This is a time to build relationships, to learn what is going on in your community, who are the people who are being affected by these realities, who are the organizations that are taking action, and to build a bridge for future connection and action. So that immersion experience is up to you to kind of look around into your community, see what's available, and to get planning. We're all always happy to brainstorm ideas with you, make suggestions, and help you plan that as needed. During those 8 sessions, as Kristen mentioned, there's also an opportunity to invite in a guest speaker. And this can be anyone locally or beyond with the gift of technology who can come and share about their personal or professional experience on this topic. Our program is designed for small groups between 8 to 14 individuals who journey together over those 8 or 9 weeks. And this program can be done virtually or in person. So if you want to meet via Zoom, that's great. Or you can also meet in the same room with one another. Or you can try a hybrid model where maybe you meet virtually for all of your regular sessions, but you meet together in person for your immersion experience. That's also an option. Both versions of the program will be made available to you upon registration. In between your weekly meetings, there are weekly assignments, and those assignments come from the books that Kristen just mentioned. So you might have a few chapters to read. There's also going to be a spiritual practice to engage with that connects what you're learning with your spiritual life and spiritual practices. The sessions themselves will change week to week. So you're going to engage with different activities, different videos, different dialogue questions, but you're going to have a general flow that's consistent week to week. And the program will begin, each session will begin with an opening prayer like the one we shared today. There'll be time for an activity or a video, and then dialogue where you can reflect and share with one another. And then there's going to be time to dive into what you learned throughout the week, time to process and question those weekly assignments with one another, to share the wisdom you gleaned, and to learn from one another's life experience and the wisdom that they're bringing in from their weekly assignment readings and practices. If you're interested in getting started with this program, the first step is to register on our website. You can do that by going to justfaith.org and starting your small group right there. The registration model that we have available to you is there's two options. So if you are part of a church or community and you want to offer this program to your community members, you can cover the cost of registration for the participants in your group. If you're an independent group or a part of a church organization that doesn't have the budget to cover the registration cost, there's the option for every participant to pay their own registration fee on a sliding fee scale. And all of that information is available on our website, but I'm also happy to answer more questions here in a minute. The only additional cost for the program is the cost of the books, which are those 2 books that Kristen mentioned. We invite you to order them from our organization and help support us as a nonprofit, but that's not required. If you already own them or you want to get an e-version, you can make that choice for yourself. Once you've registered, you'll immediately get access to the materials and begin planning and prepping. You'll get to decide how your group's going to meet, whether that's in person or via Zoom. You could select who the facilitators will be for your group. The facilitators are individuals from within the community who will lead the small group. As Kristen mentioned at the top, you do not have to be an expert to be a facilitator. You do not have to have any experience with this topic. We provide you with the materials and the training and support to lead your group and to lead it successfully. So you'll want to figure out who's going to lead the group, decide on a start date, and then begin spreading the word. We provide promotion materials for this program so you can use the bulletin announcements or the email content to spread the word and extend the invitation for folks to come and journey alongside you. So I'm going to turn it back to Kristen now. And as she said, we're going to take a few minutes to engage with an activity from the program. We'll then have a time for a closing prayer, and then we'll have time for a Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and send them in the chat or hold on to them till we're done with this activity, and then we'll open up for questions.
Great, thanks, Leela. And so we'll now engage in just a glimpse of this exercise that's used in session 2 of our program. And it was actually originally put together by our collaborators at the Christian Reformed Church. And this, in an attempt to really fit it into the time constraints of this session, I don't feel that this activity that we'll do today in any way encapsulates the beautiful job that the Christian Reformed Church did in putting together this activity, which you'll be able to engage in full during the program experience when you see it for yourself. But I hope that it will at least give you a little glimpse of what you can expect in the session and in the program. So one thing that's important for creating just effective and compassionate immigration policy is having a common memory about the past. But in the United States, because of the diversity that we enjoy as a nation, it can really be a challenge to cultivate a common memory about immigration. And so the purpose of this exercise is to work toward a shared understanding about immigration history and the values that have shaped our evolving laws and policies around immigration. And so we'll take into account memories that different groups may have, and together we'll form a more holistic or a combined understanding, or at least this will be what you will do with your group when you engage in this activity in full. We often hear the statement, my grandparents came legally and other people should too. And so this activity will help explain how immigration policy has changed and how it hasn't changed and how it has prioritized some immigration seekers over others and for hundreds of years throughout our country's history. And so in the actual activity, you will look at several moments in our history throughout a given era, spanning about a decade or so. And then you will be able to see patterns in our thinking that led to certain policy decisions being made. But today we're simply going to look at two. We're just going to zoom in on two very specific moments rather than looking at the patterns. But I hope it will still give you some insight into what this exercise is like and how it may benefit your group, and maybe even it will have some relevance and help you to process some of what we're experiencing today. And so we'll start out with this first event. During World War II, Germans and other recent immigrants from Eastern Europe became the targets of anti-immigration suspicion. This fear spilled over to others: socialists, anarchists, African Americans, labor unions, and other immigrants. Dutch Reform communities even experienced discrimination for being mistaken as Germans. All right, so we're going to start out with just looking at some of with a hopes and fears exercise. And so what we're going to start out with is with this question: what hopes of the American people may have led to this policy? What were some of the hopes that the American people have that may have resulted in this policy being created? And so I'll give you a minute to think about that. I'm thinking, just so you have an example, one that comes to mind for me is safety might have been a hope that the American people might have had that had led to this policy. So what were some of the hopes? If you have some ideas, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. Prosperity to end war. Those are great ones. Wanting to keep things the same. To escape conscription into the military. That's an interesting one. Hopes the way to end all wars. prosperity, peace, no war on our land. Those are great. Thank you, everybody. And continue to think about that and put it in the chat if you want. We'll now turn to the fears section. So we just looked at hopes and now we'll turn to fears. What were some of the fears that the American people may have had that led to this policy being created? What were some of the fears that Americans may have had that resulted in this policy? And so an example that comes to mind for me was a fear of violence. So I'll give you a second to think about that. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and put that in the chat. Fear the German takeover, the loss of white supremacy, economic loss, fear of instability, fear of being outnumbered by new immigrants. Fear that the Germans would conquer, fear that anarchy would take over, fear of difference. Yeah, these are great. Maybe you can see some parallels to today. Fear of language, not enough resources. So now we'll turn to a different moment. We'll do one more. We'll turn to a different moment in our history. And so for this one, in 1882, after a 30-year influx of Chinese immigration for work in gold mines and on the Transcontinental Railroad, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, prohibiting all Chinese immigration and denying citizenship for those already in the U.S. Promised to be temporary, it wasn't repealed until 1943. This was the first law passed by Congress to regulate immigration. The Chinese made up 0.002% of the US population at the time. I know that's really small, so I'm just going to read that one more time. After a 30-year influx of Chinese immigration for work in the gold mines and the Transcontinental Railroad, Congress passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which prohibited all Chinese immigration and denied citizenship for those already in the United States. Promised to be temporary, it wasn't repealed until 1943. This was the first law passed by Congress to regulate immigration. The Chinese made up 0.002% of the US population at the time. So we're going to do really the same thing. So I'll just invite you to think about and to type into the chat the answer to this question. What hopes of the American people may have led to this policy? What were the hopes that may have resulted in this policy being created? More jobs available for, quote, us. To avoid harm from, quote, Chinese bad actors. Wanting to keep a tight control on who can be a citizen. The hope for a unified culture that was easy to understand. Hope to maintain white dominance. A hope for no intermarriage between races. the hope to keep America, America. Mhm. Infiltrating ideologies not under God, create division, no trust. So now we'll turn to fears again. So I invite you to type into the chat the answer to this question: what fears of the American people may have contributed to this policies? What were some of the fears that may have resulted in this policy being created? Fear of them, fear of others and their uniqueness, fear of cultural changes, fear, false beliefs about others, fear of extensive Chinese immigration, fear of those who look different. Fear of being replaced. Well, thank you, everybody. In the actual simulation that you will go through together, um, you will have a chance to, again, you'll have a chance to look at several moments in history over a particular era. And you'll get to see really patterns in our thinking that have led to certain policies being created, and you'll see patterns in the policies, and you'll probably see relevance to today. And so this is really an opportunity to look at some of the fears that are bubbling up, as well as the hopes, in order to really understand what is at the root of these policies that we're seeing. So I hope that was helpful in understanding a little bit more about the program, and maybe some ways in which we approach these really tricky topics, some creative ways. And so next we'll join in a closing prayer from the program together, and then we'll have a chance for questions and answers, and Leela will guide us in that. But first, I just invite you to take a minute to pause and to take a deep breath and to recenter yourself into the space that you are in. God of our wandering ancestors, long have we known that your heart is with the refugee, that you were born into a time, to a family of refugees, fleeing violence in their homeland, who then gathered up their hungry child and fled into an alien country. Their cry, your cry, resounds through ages. Will you let me in? Give us hearts that break open when our brothers and sisters turn to us with that same cry. Then surely all these things will follow. Ears will no longer turn deaf to their voices. Eyes will see a moment for grace instead of threat. Tongues will not be silenced, but will instead advocate. And hands will reach out, working for peace in their homeland, working for justice in lands where they seek safe haven. Lord, protect all refugees in their travels. May they find a friend in me, and make me worthy of the refuge I have found in you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Kristen. As Kristen said, we'll now begin a time of Q&A. And so I invite you, if you have a question, to go down to the chat and type it in there for us. We'd be happy to answer any questions about program content, about how to use the program in your community, anything that you're left wondering with. I see Steve here has asked for the names of the two books, and I'd be happy to share that with you. The first title is The Line Becomes a River, and the second is Welcoming the Stranger. And I can put that in the chat here in a moment. Someone has asked about the registration cost. Kristen, would you mind putting those two books in the chat while I answer about the registration cost? Thanks.
Absolutely.
So the registration costs, there's two options. The first option is for an organization or church who's going to cover the cost for the participants in their group. And the cost is per participant at $35 per participant. And each small group gets 2 free facilitator registrations. So let's say you are a church with 8 participants and 2 facilitators. Your total would be $280 for the small group to gain access to the materials because that's 8 participants at $35. If you are in a small group that does not have a church or organization covering the registration fee and everyone's paying their own way, each participant will get the option to choose on a sliding fee scale based on their current financial situation to pay either $35, $55, or $75 to take part in the program. And again, 2 facilitators get to sign up free of charge. The only additional cost is the cost of those books, as I mentioned, which you can purchase through us or find locally if you prefer that option. Someone has asked Kristen about the last program update. It said that they offered this back in 2010 and are wondering about the content changes since then. Would you
Yeah,
speak to that?
absolutely. Yes. The program is completely different than it was in 2010, although there are some prayers from Mary Knoll that were in that 2010 version of the program, likely. So it's a completely different program. I believe in 2010, it likely focused on global migration, and we realized that that was too much to cover all in one program. So we decided to take this slice of the issue, as I explained earlier, and allow that to speak really to the whole of global migration. We do look at this program every year. We just last summer we had folks from the Migrant Movement for Justice in Iowa look at this program and ensure that it was updated, and we continue to keep an eye on the program as our immigration policy changes to ensure that it's still relevant.
That speaks to our last question in the chat, asking how current is the current program. So thanks for answering that, Kristen. Kim has asked if this program will ever be offered as a national small group. So just so folks know, on our website, when you go to our website, you can click Find a Small Group, and sometimes you're able to find virtual groups that are open and available to join, either hosted by our national office or hosted by folks like yourselves around the country. Right now, we do not have any national offerings of this program, but that does not mean we won't. I think we will likely have a small group offered in the fall. So if you're just an individual person looking to join a group, I encourage you to keep an eye out on our website, but also to join um, our mailings, and we'll send out an email about those national small group offerings, excuse me, in the fall. Someone's asked here, Corey's asked, do we need to take the program before facilitating it? And no, you don't need to. There are comprehensive materials provided to facilitators that include scripting for every session, all of the information you need to pick up, take, and use week to week with your group. We also provide a free facilitator training to help you get ready to lead your group, and then provide support along the way. So you're able to pick up the program and start it fresh with your group without any prior experience. I'm looking through, Kristen. I'm not seeing any other questions. Are you seeing anything on your end?
I am not.
Well, we'll keep hanging out here for a few minutes to see if any other questions come through. Okay, great. We got a few more. Wonderful. I've got two questions about the facilitator training, and I'll put a link in the chat to the next training that you can sign up for. And the length of the training is 1 hour via Zoom. I lead that, and I typically schedule one a month, but I also am more than happy to schedule additional trainings as requested. So if you aren't able to make that time work, I'm more than happy to do a one-on-one training or to gather a few folks together for an additional time. So I'll put a link to that here in the chat in just a moment.
Oh, I see a question about the advocacy program. Yes, our program, and I'd be glad to talk more one-on-one about this, Karen, if you wanna, if you'd like to hear more. But just a kind of a summary, our program, Just Action: How to Advocate and Mobilize for Justice, really it gives participants the tools that they need to advocate and mobilize for justice, obviously, in their communities. Participants will choose a specific issue that weighs on their hearts, and so your group will select an issue together. So say, for example, maybe in your community, you are facing an affordable housing crisis. There's just not enough housing for folks. Well, you might select that issue and you will use that issue, you will discuss that issue throughout the program as you are introduced advocacy and organizing tools that you can implement right there as you are going through the program together. And so in this way, the program will guide you in building a base of folks who are able to come together around your topic area. So organizers often say that change happens in one of two ways: either organize money or organize people. And so a lot of us don't have access to the kinds of money that we need to create the change we want to see. So coming together as organized people is crucial. And so it'll guide you in base building, organizing a base of folks. It'll guide you in creating strategies for approaching and creating change through people who are in decision-making positions, either through our local governments or through our institutions, and other spaces as well. And it will guide you in creating an action plan that you will commit to walking through together when the program is complete. So this can be a great companion program for this immigration program. You might want to, once you finish up with immigration, you might want to continue on and to address a particular immigration issue that you learned about during the program that's weighing on your heart, and bring that into the Just Action program. And yes, the Just Action program is very similar to this. It does have 9 sessions, including the immersion. It's structured a little tiny bit different in that the guest speaker and immersion come much earlier in the program, but other than that, it's formatted very similarly. It also has 2-hour sessions.
Someone has asked, Diane has asked here if it's possible to do our programs with fewer than 8 people, and it is. It totally is. If you are in a smaller group than a group of 8, you can still do our programs and have a really positive experience. So that is definitely an option. I'd also encourage you to, cast the net and see who comes. So you might be a part of a group that has only, let's say, 4 folks. Let's say it's a small group through your church or something like that. I'd encourage you just to ask around and see who might be interested in that. You might be surprised by who says yes. Well, I think that might be all the questions in the chat. So what we'll do from here is we will end our kind of official information meeting here in just a moment. I saw one more question come through, so I'll get to that. And then we're going to stop the recording, and Kristen, we'll just hang out for a minute. So if you want to say hi to us, if you want to ask a question and be able to unmute or just chat for a minute, we welcome you to hang around and talk for the next couple minutes before we sign off. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest in this topic. We look forward to connecting more with each of you. Um, but before we allow you all to unmute and end our official recording, let me answer this question from Eleanor. She says, would we register before we publicize the opportunity? Totally up to you. You can start spreading the word and seeing who's interested and then register, or you can register, get access to the material, and then start spreading the word. I guess it kind of depends on if you think it's gonna come through, or if you want to have the materials before you start spreading the word. I know some people like to kind of take a look at the content before they start publicizing. So that's totally up to you to decide what works best in your situation. Okay, great. Well, I will stop this